Hello, I'm Henry Emmons, and welcome back to Joy Lab.
And I'm Aimee Prasek. We are in our element of savoring, and we are in our series on the gates of grief, inspired mainly from Francis Weller's Gates of Grief. And today we're looking through the fourth gate proposed by Weller, which is what we expected but did not receive. If you're here for the first time, just want to note, no need to go back to start at the beginning of the series right now. Stay here, and then you can head back to 248, where the series starts later. So, this gate, what we expected but did not receive. This is kind of a subtle gate. Maybe it's not about obvious losses. It's about the things that should have been there but weren't. And by should have, kind of referring to these very foundational expectations that were not received. So Francis Weller writes about these things, describes them as things we may never realize we have lost because we weren't born into a village with full, joyous welcome of our gifts.
That is true.
I want to be born in that world. We can create that world. So yeah, how many of us actually receive that? How many of us grow through this world and feel truly celebrated for exactly who we are? I don't know how common that is. I don't think it's impossible. I think it's something we have to create, clearly. I'm not talking about as well, I just want to note, like parents who don't love their kids. Most parents love their kids deeply, but love is not always the same as welcome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially the kind of welcome that says, you belong here exactly as you are. You don't have to earn your place. You don't have to be anything other than yourself. Instead, most of us learned we had to perform to belong, be good. We had to be successful. We had to be less sensitive. And that creates what Weller calls a diminished experience of who we are. And it's the grief of this gate because we do expect to be welcomed and loved for who we are. It's a fair expectation because that's who we are. And we have a drive for acceptance, connection, for support, because those things are associated with our individual and collective survival. But if we weren't given that, if we aren't given that, then we aren't receiving something that is really foundational, and we aren't showing up fully. We're showing up likely, as careful, as strategic. And so this gate really includes unconscious disappointment, also feelings of loneliness and connection. And at the core, and as Weller notes, are longing to belong and longing to be longed for.
I think it might help to talk for a moment about attachment theory, because I think it may explain partly why this gate matters so much. So in attachment theory, we learned that babies, actually all primates, are hardwired to form bonds with their caregivers. It's not optional. It's about survival. And it's not just food and shelter we're looking for. We're looking for something much more nuanced that's often called attunement. We need someone who sees us, who really sees us, sees who we are, not who they need us to be. And when that happens, when we receive consistent, attuned care, we develop what's called secure attachment. We learn that the world is essentially a safe place, that we matter, that we can trust our own experience. But when it doesn't happen, or if it's inconsistent, then we adapt. We learn to be vigilant, to perform maybe, to hide parts of ourselves that don't quite meet with whatever the caregiver wants us to be. And so we learn that love is conditional. We think we have to try harder to be seen. Or maybe we just give up and act like we don't even care. But of course, we do still care. I agree with what you said, Aimee, that I think most parents do love their children, but love and attunement are not the same thing either. You can love someone and still not really see them for who they are. So maybe the parents are simply distracted by their own pain, their work, their unmet needs, or maybe they just don't understand what children needs. I don't know. But really, it's not about finding or assigning blame. It's about understanding what was missing and what the cost of that was to us. Because if we don't receive that foundational welcome, that unconditional belonging, it doesn't just disappear. We carry it forward with us. So we live with this vague sense that something is off, that somehow I'm not quite enough.
Yes, thank you for bringing up attunement too. I think it's really important to see the differences between love, welcoming, attunement. We want to be seen, really seen and welcome and loved and accepted. And you noted as well the vagueness. I think that's important. This grief is so often kind of invisible with death or, grief after somebody dies. It's just like a clear object of grieving.
Mm-hmm.
And others can see it too. They name it. You get sympathy cards about it. But with this gate, you might not even realize you're grieving. And you don't get those sympathy cards. It's hard for others to see it unless you name it for them and explain it. So you kind of feel vaguely unfulfilled in some ways, like you're always waiting for something that never comes. And this does connect quite well, I think, to our element of joy for February savoring, because if you're carrying this unconscious grief, the sense that something's missing and something that you really can't name, but is there, then it's hard to savor and kind of land fully in your life. And I think this is a really common gate, but we don't name it because it's also hard to accept that we were owed these things and we didn't get them. That's a loss. And so sometimes we try to name it by blaming ourselves with explanations like we're a slacker or languishing or being too sensitive or having imposter syndrome, all of which suggests that what's missing is our fault. Like we're not passionate enough, we're not strong enough, we're not confident enough. But that's not the case with this gate. This gate acknowledges that we are enough just as we are. And when that is not honored, there is a loss. But instead of attending to this, it's also common to close up and feel really lonely because we feel like we can't be who we are. Or like you noted, we try to fix it with perfectionism or a kind of obsessive drive to achieve, to be better, to prove ourselves worthy. Or we shapeshift, put masks on to please others. And I just got to add this, just as an aside, maybe it's not that if we accept everyone for who they are, that we'll have a bunch of selfish, destructive, immoral jerks. The truth is that a sense of belonging, of acceptance, of seeing one another creates more pro-social behaviors. So when folks feel like they belong, they help others belong too. Doesn't that sound really good right now?
Mm-hmm.
And so this gate requires us to cultivate belonging, to not isolate, to find or create the welcome and belonging we needed and still need. Because you can't go back and change your childhood, but you can create new experiences in the present.
Let me pick up on something you said, Aimee, that you can't heal this in isolation. So,
Yep.
in attachment theory, they talk about corrective relational experiences. So it's experiences that give us what we needed, but didn't get the first time around. So it is never too late for this. This is the good news. It can happen at any age.
Yeah.
When we find relationships, whether it's a therapist, a partner, friend, a community, where we are truly seen and accepted, it starts to rewire those old patterns. It's like the nervous system finally gets the message, oh, this is what it feels like to be safe, to be welcome, to belong. But here's what I've noticed in my own life and also in working with people for years now, that we often resist these corrective experiences when they show up because receiving that kind of love and unconditional acceptance can feel uncomfortable if we're not used to it.
Yep.
Seems paradoxical, but I think it's true. And it just doesn't match our internal script. So we can push it away or tell ourselves this cannot be real. And there's a term for this. It's called emotional backdraft. It's when we finally let our guard down and all these old feelings come flooding in. And it can just feel really a lot worse for a while before the healing really starts to take hold. But it's part of the healing.
Mm.
So we're not just learning to receive welcome, we're also grieving the welcome that we didn't receive earlier. So if you're doing this work and it feels kind of uncomfortable or awkward, maybe even painful, take that as a positive sign. I think it just means something real is happening. And it means you're allowing yourself to be touched by something that you've needed for a very long time.
Yeah, we did an episode on emotional backdraft. I'll put that in the show notes. Such an important note there. Henry, thank you. Let's talk about some practices for this gate. I think a first helpful practice is to identify with a lot of compassion what you needed but didn't receive. You might reflect or journal about questions like, when I was a child, what did I long for? What kind of welcome or support was missing? What did I need that I didn't get? And as you reflect or write, let yourself grieve. These are losses. And your system needs to kind of name them and bless them on their way so that they don't hold you captive. I'll give an example. I was doing this, and the experience that rose up for me, I was kind of surprised by. I was on a mission trip, long ago. And we were like driving through a community with a lot of poverty. And I noticed the dogs roaming around. And the first thing I said was, I feel so sad for those dogs. I think I was 8 or 9. I don't know. And the person next to me, one of the leaders, said, you need to care about the people more than you care about the dogs.
Mm.
And it just really hit me because I do have just like a very deep sense of grief and empathy for animals. It's just part of my wiring, as it is for everyone. And it's what I noticed at that time. But what I took from that message was that your caring needs to be prescriptive, or it needs to be in this ordered fashion, or it needs to follow in this rule set. And it felt really good and y'all, if you've listened to the podcast, you know some of my history with the church, being kicked out and stuff. So I've got some other stuff going on there. But it made me realize that, no, that was bad advice. That was unhelpful to diminish my sense of caring. And couldn't we include all of those creatures in that circle of care? Yes, we could. So I really appreciate just this exercise as an opportunity to bring up a little bit of stuff that maybe you hadn't thought about in a while, but that affirms, that reclaims your sense of caring and compassion and love, like those things that are part of you that maybe as a kid you were given a finger about. I think it can be really powerful. And maybe I'll note as well, grieve for the folks who didn't offer you those things. Because in nearly 100% of the cases, the people who failed you here didn't have it either. They didn't have the sense of belonging or that support or that need fulfilled either. They didn't have any of it to give. So that loss or that ache that you have felt or feel now, they probably had the same one. So this isn't a blaming exercise. It is a grieving practice. And this can be hard work. It can be emotionally intense. So give yourself a lot of care and the supports that you need back off when it's too much. You can do this in bits.
Yeah. I think too that it really helps to turn toward those younger parts of yourself with real compassion. And I think this is another place where internal family systems can really be helpful. We've talked about this recently, and I think in IFS, we learn to access what's called self-energy. And that's the wise, compassionate core that exists in all of us. I think it's what in mindfulness is often referred to as the observing self. And so from that place, we can turn toward the parts of ourself that carry these old wounds, and we can ask them questions, not with a anxious, fixing agenda, but with genuine curiosity, real questions. So you might ask, what does this part of me need right now? And then listen, just really listen. Not for what you think you should need, but for what actually comes up. And so maybe that younger part just needs to hear, I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere. Or maybe you didn't do anything wrong. You deserve better. Or maybe it just needs to be held for a while in your awareness without trying to fix a thing. So this isn't about reparenting in some sort of forced or artificial way. It's just offering yourself the sort of presence you would offer to anybody that you truly cared about. Simple, steady, no agenda. And then this is important, I think. You do need to bring it into relationship with others. Not because you're broken or you need to be fixed, but because, like we've been saying, we are so wired for connection. That's how we heal. We heal in relationship. So find your people, the ones that can hold space for all of you, including the parts that didn't get what they needed. And when you find them, stay with them. Practice letting yourself be seen. Practice believing, even if it's just a little bit, that you truly do belong.
Yeah. Practice staying. We talked a lot about this last episode too, finding those people. So head back there for more resources. But back to emotional backdraft for just a moment and your notice of staying again, Henry. Because again, it might be surprising that you feel hesitant to stay and savor the welcome from these spaces and connections. If you feel that hesitancy, that awkwardness, then give yourself credit, I think, because it's totally normal. And it's also a sign that you're opening up. I think like you've opened up to take in some of that, even if it's like, oh God, how do I process this? It's in you. It's making its way through you. So that's like a super good sign. Dr. Brené Brown talks about this in her work and encourages us to lean into the discomfort of being truly seen. So as we continue to lean in and savor and stay and savor again, we can create a new story of acceptance and our belonging. And that opens up so much more in our lives. I think that's the common story in these gates too. We let grief in these gates. We also open the gate to so much more in our lives, more love, more connections, more joy. Again, as maybe we've said in previous episodes, it's surprising what grief can offer us when we work with it. Not just letting go of a loss, but it creates some ground for something more. So next week, we'll enter the 5th gate, ancestral grief. We'll explore the pain we carry from those who came before us and how we can tend to that kind of generational sorrow. To close us today, I want to share some wisdom from Mirabai Starr. Here's what she wrote. Something magical happens when we bear witness to each other in grief, something alchemical. It transmutes the lead of our devastation into the gold of connection. Our own compassion is activated. Our souls are soothed. The narrow circle of our private pain expands, and we recognize that we belong to each other. We take our rightful place in the web of interbeing and find refuge.
Thank you for listening to the Joy Lab podcast. If you enjoyed today's show, visit joylab.coach to learn more about the full Joy Lab program. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
Please remember that this content is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to provide medical advice and is not a replacement for advice and treatment from a medical professional. Please consult your doctor or other qualified health professional before beginning any diet change, supplement, or lifestyle program. Please see our terms for more information.